Hey everyone, welcome again to the BATTASS Podcast, the Batman the Animated Series show podcast where we talk about Batman the Animated Series. Whew, we're almost done. I've got it down to a science. We've got 2 episodes left before we sail off into the sunset of Batman the Animated Series. As always, my name is Clay McCormick, and with me is Sean Murphy. How you doing, Sean?
Man, I have. It's been a great summer, and I have not been driving my Datsun at all. Mm-hmm. And I realized the reason I don't drive it is because I'm afraid that it might be broken, and I don't know it yet.
Yep.
So it basically is an expensive 1-to-1 scaled die-cast car in my garage. As I walk by it into my studio every morning, I'm just like, all right.
You're just stacking stories that are completely unrelatable to anybody else listening to this show.
Yeah, sorry, I'll make this quick. But I don't know if I regret having this car, because there's that saying, like, the more you own, the more that owns you. Mm-hmm. And that car fucking owns me. Like, I've had to take it back to Massachusetts, which is a 2-hour drive, at least 5 times to get it fixed since I had it built, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get to drive it. That's a nice drive.
Yeah, but when the steering isn't working correctly and you're doing 70 on the highway, it's really scary.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
Like, I wish I could. It's weird. Like, I'm kind of all over the place here, but I actually trust my motorcycle more, and I feel safer on my bike than I do in my Datsun, because it's just so much horsepower. It's not power steering. It's like it's just too much, basically. But anyway, no. Every time I get into it, I'm like, something new breaks. And recently, like, it wouldn't start, and it was basically the ignition cylinder. It was a quick $200 fix. But again, like, this fucking thing won't start. And then now, like, I was going to take it out today, and I'm like, no, if I take it out and something might happen to it, it might break. So if I don't drive it, then I know that my car is working 100%.
Yeah.
But then months go by, and I've got a car that probably works, but I never drive it anymore. So it's like, what's the fucking point of this thing?
I think that makes perfect sense. You can't break something you don't use, right? So, ergo, you have beat the system in this case.
Yeah, I guess. I know that there's got to be car people, someone who has, like, an old object that's an antique and they're afraid to use it because they might break it. I don't know. People have to, because someone's got to be able to relate to this, right?
I'm sure. There's lots of people in the world. We're doing 2 episodes of Batman the Animated Series, or the new Batman Adventures, as it was called at this point. We're doing Legends of the Dark Knight and Girls' Night Out. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about Legends of the Dark Knight.
The way I hear it, he isn't even human. He's like a giant pterodactyl beast with big fangs and talons. And when he sees a bad guy, he swoops down from the sky and carries him off. Scree! Scree!
Reality check, Nick.
Legends of the Dark Knight, story by Robert Goodman and Bruce Timm, teleplay by Robert Goodman, directed by Dan Reba. And in this one, a group of Gotham City youths tell their stories about what they believe the Dark Knight to be really like. This episode acknowledges the works of Bill Finger, Dick Sprang, and Frank Miller. Note, loosely based on the Batman Nobody Knows from Batman number 250 from July 1973 by Frank Robbins and Dick Giordano.
My favorite designer.
Yes. And contains a direct adaptation of part of the comic Batman The Dark Knight Returns.
Now, you have been frothing at the crotch to talk about this episode.
At the crotch.
You never heard that phrase?
I've never heard that phrase before.
You're welcome, everybody. Yeah, you've been dying to talk about this episode for a while.
Yes.
So go ahead, Clay. The floor is yours.
I love this episode. This has long been probably my favorite episode of the series as a whole. Mm-hmm. I think it's so much fun. The way that they do the different styles, they start off with a 1950s story and then they go into Dark Knight Returns. This is still the best adaptation of Dark Knight Returns that's ever been done. This is better than the full-length version that they did a few years ago.
I would agree.
And it's just the story overall I really like, because it kind of encompasses everything about Batman that makes Batman fun, which is Batman can mean something different to everybody. There's some people who like the goofy Batman. There's some people who like the serious Batman. Some people who like Batman in space. And this story kind of I don't want to use the word explain because that puts too fine a point on it, but it kind of it kind of illustrates how all of those can exist in the same. Batman can be all of those things at once, because this story has two very different interpretations of Batman based on what these kids have heard, and then at the end they actually see Batman, and seeing the real Batman only strengthens their opinion that they came to the story, the beginning of the story with. None of them are like, oh, I guess we were wrong. They both come away thinking that their version of Batman was correct. So I think it's a great, it's just a ton of fun. It has the feeling of like a late era, a late career cover album kind of thing, like when a band's been around for 25 years and they got to put another album out and they're like, you know what, let's do an album of all the songs that we liked when we were kids. It's got that kind of feel to it. Like this and the next one especially, you can kind of feel like they're rounding out the series. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really fun episode that is, while seeming like it's kind of just a nothing episode, is actually a really nice statement about Batman in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with 90% of that, I think.
All right. Well, I guess that's it.
Yeah, it's too bad the Dark Knight cartoon wasn't better. The
full
Dark Knight Returns.
The full length one, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, like when they first were talking about doing that, I'm like, oh, great. Just take that one section of that episode from Batman the Animated Series and just make it bigger, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't even close.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't want to go in on that too hard because maybe we'll cover that someday. But like, it just what this episode does so well is it, and this is something a problem I've kind of had with a lot of the feature adaptations they've been doing lately, is they're picking these stories that are big time, marquee stories like Dark Knight Returns or Batman Year One or Long Halloween or something like that. And with those stories come a very specific visual look. And they don't really go out of their way to kind of make the cartoon look like the comic.
Yeah.
Whereas
they run
this
it
one,
through the mill.
Yeah, it just kind of looks like all the other ones they've been doing. But when they do it in this one, that is part of the point, is that they're specifically trying to animate the 50s style Batman or animate the Dark Knight Returns Batman. And I think especially the Dark Knight Returns, they nail it.
Yeah. When I first saw this as a kid, I was like 5 minutes late. And I'm watching while it's all animated in the Dick Sprang style. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this? That guy's eyes are flesh colored. Like, why does Joker sound weird? What is going on? Like it was so off-putting to me. I thought they had changed the whole style of the series without me knowing it, and I was not thrilled. And finally, when it ended, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's like a bunch of different. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But I have never not felt that disgust in my head every time I watched this episode, just for that first part. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. I just am not a Dick Sprang style Batman fan. I equated this with Adam West when I saw it as a kid because I didn't know any better.
Well, they actually they have a nice homage moment at the end of the episode, at the end of the vignette, when Batman and Robin turn and shake hands with each other. It's almost identical to the shot in the opening of the Batman 66, the cartoon opening of Batman 66, where Batman and Robin shake hands and then Batman morphs into the Batman symbol. So it's the same era.
Yeah. I didn't realize that. For some reason, I thought that Adam West Batman was the first time that the Batman was light and jovial. I totally forgot that Batman had been light and jovial in the comics decades before Adam West and Burt Ward did it. You know what I mean?
It was a big change. If I can remember my comic books history, it was due in large part to the creation of the Comics Code in the 50s.
Okay.
After they took down EC Comics, basically used it as an excuse to take down EC Comics. They created the Comics Code, which put a pretty strict guideline on what you could and couldn't show in comics or on comic book covers and stuff. And so,
Right.
Batman, which skews darker, they kind of adjusted, kind of swung it in the other direction and made it more kid-friendly.
Right.
I guess they were kind of already in that zone because I know part of that thing was that guy, that psychologist, Frederick Wortham, who took the comic book companies to put them on trial in front of Congress or whatever, had been arguing that Batman and Robin were promoting homosexuality or something, the same ridiculous arguments that people, every time there's a new popular form of entertainment, someone comes up with ways that it's destroying the nation's youth, and it's always ridiculous.
I would love to see that turned into a TV series on HBO directed by David Fincher. You got the creators are doing their thing, and suddenly it's, the Red Scare is over. Well, now what do we have to do? Oh, I know. Let's go after these people who are poisoning our children's brains or whatever.
Right.
And you have it's just so nuts to me that the Senate can be like, hey, you citizen who's doing something we don't like, we demand you come here and talk to us and tell us everything about what's going on. Then we'll decide if we're mad at you or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't seem very democratic. That doesn't seem like what the founding fathers really wanted.
Yeah, it seems like it happens every 10 years or so with whatever popular form of entertainment. I mean, the same thing happened in the 80s with heavy metal, and that's how you got the parental advisory stickers on everything. That you've got those famous videos of Dee Snider and John Denver, both, and Frank Zappa talking to a Congress about why it's bullshit to censor music and stuff.
Or when Lars goes up before Congress to complain about why Napster's bad and it's destroying everything. Is that the same kind of thing?
The other one is more of like a protecting art and free speech thing. The Napster thing is more of a protecting my money kind of thing.
Right. I mean, from my understanding of law, which isn't great, Marvel and DC could have said to the Senate committee, fuck off, we're not going to come sit before you. We're going to keep making comics the way we're making them. Mm-hmm. And if kids do and don't buy them, whatever. It's up to the parents to monitor what the kids are reading. We don't have to come. Who's paying for our plane ticket? Who's paying for the hotel?
Right.
You want us to do this? What pressure did they really have? I get back then everyone was like, ooh, the government's mad at you, we all better do something, which today I just don't think people would ever react that way, you know?
Well, I don't know exactly what they could or couldn't do, but I do know that at least in the case of the parental advice in the music stuff in the 80s, and I think possibly also with the Hays Code in the movies in the 30s or whatever, I think it was a case of we need to self-regulate, otherwise they're going to do it and they're going to destroy us. So, and also when it comes to the comic books, Marvel and DC weren't really the people who were most affected by the change. EC Comics was the highest selling books on the stands. And so DC and Marvel, I think, were kind of like, well, if we can self-regulate this thing, we can essentially put EC out of business because all of the things in the comics code just happen to be things they do in every issue of the books they put out.
Right.
I don't know if
That's true. I remember that too now that you mention it.
Yeah, I don't know if they were actively colluding with each other, but I'm pretty sure that was an understood byproduct of it, was that there's no way EC is going to be able to survive this.
Yeah. What could the government have done if we didn't put the comics code in there?
I have no idea.
Make it, you have to put labels, ratings on movies, basically.
Well, I mean, that's all self-imposed stuff. I mean, in England, I can tell you in England in the 80s, the National Censor Board was so powerful that they would arrest people who were selling videotapes that were on banned movie lists. So, the British censors, as far as I know, have been, at least used to be, very intense. It was a whole thing in the 80s.
Yeah, and getting off topic more here, but the way the BBC is funded and the way that there is government money sort of going into entertainment.
You just don't want to talk about this episode, do you?
I'm sorry. But it is interesting. Yeah, I'm just curious. Like, give me your
yeah.
best shot. Like, what the hell is the government really going to do here? And I didn't realize that the ratings on movies and video games was actually self-imposed either. That's interesting.
I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know all the ins and outs of it. It's happened so many times that I can't really keep it all straight. But that's my understanding. It's kind of like, if we don't do this, then they're going to do it.
So, getting back to the episode, what did you think of the Joel Schumacher gag?
It took me, when I was a kid, I did not get that joke at all. It was only later when I found the episode, years later, when I was like, oh, I remember that episode. I want to find that, and I downloaded it off of something like Kazaa or whatever. Yeah. And I got to that point, and I was like, holy shit, they made a Joel Schumacher joke.
Yeah, like not that long after Joel Schumacher did those movies. No,
Batman and Robin came out like the year before.
Yeah, he didn't wait to start attacking. Yeah, people who don't know what we're talking about, these three kids are wandering around at night, and then this one very effeminate kid with long hair, and he's slightly lispy and gay, like 90s gay, like not politically correct gay, is talking about how Batman wears rubber tights and, whatever. And this kid's like slinking around.
They basically go up to the line of him saying, I love the nipples on the Batsuit, basically.
Yeah, basically. And they named the kid's names literally Joel.
Yes, yeah.
As in Joel Schumacher, who you would say, you could argue ruined, back then at least, in the 1997 or 98, he did ruin Batman.
Yeah, it's an interesting shot. Do you think it's too much?
I don't know if that ages well.
Yeah.
But I honestly am not above doing that shit myself, honestly, because, you're alone in a room all day, you're with your buddies at work, and you're just like, can't we, it's interesting when the creators so clearly leave their stamp on something personal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've been listening to the audiobook of the history of Marvel Comics, and it is super fascinating. It's a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be, and you would be shocked at how often they would do that stuff in comics to like a very, very thinly veiled degree. Like there are multiple Jack Kirby comics like from the later years where the bad guys or whoever are like very thinly veiled versions of Stan Lee or whoever else wronged them, or not just him, like any of the other creators in the 70s who were mad at their editors would just have a character show up who was like just this asshole who looks exactly like their editor.
I remember Alex Ross did a cover for, I think it was RoboCop, and in the background it was for Now Comics, which is no longer a thing. Yeah. And he wrote Now Comics blows, but he wrote it backwards in like a crossword puzzle way in the background somewhere. And I don't know if they ever caught it or not.
Yeah. Well, it's like all the dicks you drew into Batman to see if your editors were paying attention.
Oh man, I actually drew a dick once in Batman years ago, and I have to forever deny it, because if I ever admit that it is a dick, they are going to have to spend a lot of money pulling those books, basically. And
just to be clear, this is not an admission that that's what you did.
Of course not.
Right.
No, it's not.
Right.
I'm not even saying which Batman.
Right. Yes.
None of my Batman, of course.
No.
But no, it's funny because I used to work at a T-shirt company and we doing design work, and we would put like marijuana leaves in the background and just kind of hide shit because we thought it was funny. And it's so stupid. Like the risk that you're running of getting caught and possibly losing your job is not worth the
right.
Look what I just did. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like
but I think if you're overworked and exhausted, you're prone to sort of throw in stuff like that before you're realizing how dumb it is.
Yeah, like the all of the recalled versions of The Little Mermaid they had to pull back because someone turned the Atlantis castle into a giant dildo.
Well, first they denied it, like no, it's just a phallously shaped tower. Like that's not a penis with a head on it and a vein down the middle. No way.
Yeah. There's one in The Lion King too, right? Like I think there's a point where some animals like stomp on the ground, and for a single frame, the cloud that comes up says sex in smoke letters. Yep.
It was like flowers or plants, leaves or whatever.
Yeah. What we're getting at is artists.
That's how long it takes to animate leaves floating around into one word. Like that is going a long way for a ham sandwich.
Whoever did that is thinking to himself, I could be the jizz guy on a hentai shoot right now, but I have to draw the leaves in the friggin' Lion King for Disney.
Yeah, that's commitment, because that had to take him a week to get that done. I mean, it's like you make a bad decision when you throw in a thing in the background and you go about your day. Like, all right, I drew a Dick and Batman somewhere, and then I moved on. It was a stupid decision. But to do that dumb thing 5 days straight while you're animating the leaves coming together into the shape of the word sex, that is, you are really unhappy, really overworked, or really fucking stupid.
Yeah. That is the kind of thing where I assume that was his only job, was that one thing. He's like, well, may as well make it worth it.
Yeah, like maybe he applied to be like, I want to be a lead animator. I'm tired of fucking drawing leaves in the background. They don't think I can. Well, I'm going to take. Oh, maybe they rejected his version of the script that had the word sex in. They're like, we could never put this in there, And he's like, fine, I'm going to put sex in the movie one way or another.
Yeah, guys, I got the notes back for the script. There's one thing you guys wanted to cut out, and I really think it's really personal to me, and I really think it should be in there. Can the leaves spell out sex?
I was doing storyboards for Venture Brothers once. I was applying for a job, so they gave me this like basic, here's a few scenes, just storyboard this out and we'll see if we can give you a job. And I did it for free because I was looking for work at the time. I was in LA, and the scene was like 3 standard scenes, but this guy was running around, I think it was the Monarch, and he was chasing people around this office, and I added my own scene just because I thought it would be funny if he chased them into the bathroom and you see the women's door close and he shoots a bunch of women in the neck with his gun, and then he walks out. And I boarded out that whole scene just because I thought it was hilarious, and I thought it would be fitting with the style of the show. And I did get a call back because they get so many submissions of storyboard artists to have one where it's like, wait a minute, I don't remember this scene. Who is this guy? This is hilarious, and it actually worked. And I got a call from the guy who wanted me to submit some more stuff, but that's just when I started getting work at DC, so I had to turn the work down.
Yeah.
But I didn't do anything like write sex in the background or
no, you just had the Monarch assault a bunch of women in a bathroom. Yeah.
But the door was closed and you couldn't really see.
Oh yeah, well if you don't see it,
that's why
matter.
It's funny.
Yeah, if you don't see it, then it didn't happen, right?
That's why it's still a G rating, I would assume.
Anyway. In the 50s segment, we've got Michael McKean doing the voice of the Joker, which I think is really great. He's the lead singer from Spinal Tap, and he shows up in a lot of the Christopher Guest movies.
Nice.
Yeah, he's got a great voice. He had a great laugh for the Joker.
Yeah, he did.
And I really like the 50s one as well. I know you don't care for the style, but like I think they nail that whole look and feel pretty well. And it actually, years later, they did a new show. Warner Brothers did a new show called Batman Brave and the Bold that was pretty much all this kind of style. Yeah. And it looks pretty similar to this. Like, it's a little bit more modern than this is. Yeah. But it's got the same feel. And that show, I recommend that show. That's a good show.
Yeah. I remember thinking that's not my kind of Batman, so I never paid attention to it. But I've heard recently from many people that show really was good, and you can't just have dark Batman all the time. It was good that they shook it up a bit.
Yeah. That being said, I mean, this is probably its own episode, but the newest The Batman trailer came out today, I think, and it's a lot of the same stuff from the first trailer. It's just a little bit less morose. So I don't know what that means for the movie, but
I couldn't quite follow the narrative too. Like, every trailer should have a story going on within it, and I just felt it was like a bunch of mishmash ideas, and I didn't quite. I don't know. I wasn't too impressed by it, but I am excited for the movie.
Yeah, me too. I think Matt Reeves is a very underrated director, so I'm really looking forward to see what he does.
So I know that you love this episode, and I'm always sort of. I like this episode. I don't love it. And here's my critique on it. Yeah. If you will allow me a few minutes here. I think this episode. I get what this episode is doing. I understand that it sets out to accomplish a goal, and it does accomplish it, and I get the gag, and I think it's fun, and I love how the kids are the characters, and they have this imagination of who Batman is, and by the end, they all see their own version of Batman anyway, and Batman can be anyone to anybody, basically. Like, I totally get what they're doing here, and I'm fine saying it's just not my type of Batman episode. However, if I was going to make this a 5, you have 3 kids, but you only have two parts where they like, I wanted the first kid said he thinks Batman's like Man-Bat. He thinks this guy's a monster. I wish they had animated that section too. Yeah. And then they did the other 2 sections, because doing things in 3s just makes sense for narrative purposes. Doing things in 2s is weird. And then at the end, where all 3 kids see the version of their Batman, like, we never really get to see what the first kid's version really is. And I know that would make this episode like 5 minutes longer, but to me, that would have made it a 5.
Yeah, I think that's really just a timing thing, because it's funny, because when I remember this episode, I remember, oh, there's 3 kids and each one of them gets to tell the story about what they think Batman is, but that's not the case. They only do 2 of them.
Yeah, in my head, I always think that there are 3 different versions, and there really is only 2, and that makes me think, like, why aren't there just 2 kids then?
Yeah, well, I kind of get it, because if you look at the episode from, overall, there are 3 Batman stories, just the third one is the one that's happening in real time.
Right.
And the catalyst of the story is the one kid saying, this is what I think Batman is, and the other 2 are like, no, that's not what it is at all. So I can understand the choice being like, okay, one of them is saying, this is what I think it is, and that's the jumping off point to tell these 2 imaginary stories, and then we'll do the third story. It'll be the real one.
Yeah.
But I do. Yeah, I mean, shit. I would like if there were 5 kids there, all telling different versions of Batman. I would love that.
Yeah, like that first kid is telling the Kelly Jones version.
Yeah,
of Batman.
exactly. Yes.
I want to see that.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely would like
or
to see that.
A Tim Sale version would be cool. I think if they got rid of the Joe Schumacher bit and shortened the Dick Sprang one a little bit, they could have made room for that kid to have his Man-Bat version. Yeah. And we open it up with like a horror clip, and then you go into fun Batman, and then we go into Frank Miller Batman. Like, I think that would have been a 5.
Yeah, I bet you could. 3. You could probably start, if you started the episode with Monster Batman.
Cold open.
Yeah, and then you pull away from that, and you find out, oh, it's a kid telling a story. I think you probably could have worked it in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that kid's version sounded way cooler, where Batman has fangs and shit like that. Like,
have they ever done?
In fact, I'd rather see that than the Dick Sprang version, but I know it's a kid show. I get why they went with Sprang.
Have they done an animated version of the Kelly Jones stuff, like the one where he's a vampire? I'm not sure. I can't remember. But again, that's another one where it's like, I feel like if you're gonna
if it's not in his style, then it won't work.
Right. If you're gonna take a story like that with such an identifiable style and you don't try to do the style, then what's the point? It's
like when they do Hellboy animated stuff. I don't get why they don't just animate Mike's style. It's so ready to be animated, and it's very blocky and simple. It's way easier to do than the 3D manga style shit that they attempted.
Right. Yeah. They managed to find some of these movies that they do. They find kind of an interesting middle ground. Like when they did All-Star Superman. It wasn't exactly. I was really hoping they were going to do a Frank Quitely thing, because I feel like Frank Quitely's art is you can refine it down enough where you can animate it easily and still have that look.
Right.
But it's kind of sort of a little bit Frank Quitely, but not all the way. And when they did Hush, it kind of looks like Jim Lee's art, but it's not all the way. I mean, Jim Lee's probably hard to animate because it's a lot of lines and stuff.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I guess actually with this episode, they were originally going to do a third part that was the 70s Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams Batman. But,
cool.
But they realized that Neil Adams' artwork would be too difficult to animate because it's too realistic and too many lines and too much detail.
It's funny. You remember the cartoon The Max on MTV?
Yeah, sure do.
The way that they animated that, I thought was brilliant. They would pick their moments where they would almost take Sam Keith's art and animate just like a little thing, just like you're sitting watching the Max sitting in an alley, talking to himself out loud or whatever, and he would maybe be breathing a little bit. So they had all the Sam Keith detail, and they focused on rendering his breath just a little. All of your focus goes into that because you have to render all those little lines that he does. You can only, spend so much time on each shot. So that's where they focused rather than, having the Max run around and all that.
Sure.
But then they did have the stuff where Max would run around, and it was a lot more simple looking. Like the style of the show changed, but they had moments where they really brought Sam Keith's artwork into the cartoon. I thought they did it really effectively, and they really focused on the moody panels. I like feel like if they ever tried to animate White Knight, I would almost say, can you try to do that? Can you work in some of my panels and like animate a little section of it, and then pick your other moments? And I don't know, like there's got to be a way to get. I just thought it was so effective for the Max,
Yeah. I have to go back and watch some of that because I remember it being on, but I don't think I watched it that often because I think it was like I was just young enough where that block of animation that MTV did was like over my head a bit because they had that. Beavis and Butthead, which of course I liked, but then like what was was it the head?
Yeah,
with the guy with the gigantic like football head.
Yeah,
like
so funny.
I never
such a Gen X channel that was.
Yeah, I never got into that. I never got into the Max. I never got into Eon Flux. Eon Flux, I remember. I thought the art in that show was the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like it was. Yeah. It was just. I did not enjoy looking at it.
Yeah. No, it's an acquired taste.
Yeah.
That Eric Canetti knows him. He worked with him. Eric Chung, maybe.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he did like a Phantom 299.
Oh, sure.
Cartoon,
yeah.
And I was rewatching the Animatrix last night, and he did one of those as well. They're like hyper sexualized European looking,
right?
With the Japanese sensibility. It was really unique.
Really ropey muscles and stuff. And I bet I would like it a lot more now if I watched it than I did when I was a kid. But yeah, the second story, obviously the Dark Knight Returns one. I don't know how they could manage to get this so right, and then when they did the longer version, not get it right.
Yeah.
Because like Michael Ironsides is a fantastic Batman, and unfortunately Peter Weller, not so much. Peter Weller being the one who plays Batman in the longer version,
right?
And it like Batman in this very minimal dialogue, just kind of hitting the highlights of his dialogue in Dark Knight Returns, and Ironsides makes it work. It sounds great, and in the longer one, he sounds like an animatronic person, unfortunately, and not the cool kind that Peter Weller plays, where he has a gun in his leg.
Right. So I'm watching the Max right now.
Thank you for paying attention to what I was saying.
Well, yeah, whatever. Yeah, no, I don't think Weller. I was never a fan of Weller in that, obviously.
The artwork animation of Frank Miller's stuff just works so well. Like it lends itself, the blending of Frank Miller's sensibility and Bruce Timm's sensibility works so well because they both have big shadows and silhouettes that they deal with, and it's a really nice fit.
Yeah, they went with Frank Miller's blockiness and shapes. They didn't go with the detail, obviously, because that's too time-consuming.
Right.
But I also noticed, like, they actually fixed Frank, the Batmobile, like the big tank.
Mm-hmm.
I think it looks better here than it does in the actual comic.
Oh, really?
Because Frank Miller is not a technical designer. I don't think he would ever admit to that. So when he drew the tank, it's like, oh, yeah, this looks good from this angle. And what would it look like from the side? I guess like this. I don't know. Anyway, next panel. Like when I draw machines, I make sure they look good from it's a whole process for me that I know a lot of artists don't bother with, and that's fine. But I thought for this that they fleshed it out a lot more and made it look more realistic in a way.
Yeah.
As bizarre as that thing looks,
Yeah.
And you have that great action figure of this episode,
don't
you?
Yeah. I have the set of Batman and Robin and the mutant leader. And it's a great figure. I mean, the streamlining of the style works really well.
Whenever we record this podcast in person at your apartment, I'm always like playing with that figure while we're talking.
Yeah, it's a great figure. I should have kept
it heavy too.
What's that? Yeah, I like the big ones that they do now. They're a lot more satisfying for some reason. I think because they're so expensive now that it's like if I'm going to spend the money, I want a beefy action figure.
Yeah,
I want them to have used a lot of plastic.
With some weight. Like if you throw it at your little brother, he will end up in the hospital.
Yes.
So what would you draw on this one?
That's a tough call because I mean it's stuff. You know what? I would like to draw 50s Batman. I think because I've never drawn Batman like that before.
Yeah, with your style, that's pretty bold.
I think it would be kind of fun. I think there would be a way to marry the two sensibilities in a way that worked, I think.
If I was your editor, I would say you should draw the scene where Batman is fighting in the mud, because I would just be looking at your bloody hell stuff and like you're primed and ready to go when it comes to mud.
Oh yes, that's one thing I can tell you I can definitely draw at this point. Is mud.
Nice.
Yeah, that would be fun. I actually I don't know who has been commissioning it, but someone out there with a shitload of money has been commissioning artists to do full page recreations of The Dark Knight Returns. And
wow.
that would be a really fun one to do, that mud fight with the mutant leader.
Yeah.
What would you draw?
I don't like I would draw the tank, of course.
Yeah.
Not only the outside of it, I would sort of tweak it a bit and make it look like it actually would work, rather than be like the treads are the treads are not in the center of the vehicle, they're sort of more the back, and you have this big like elephant nose trunk of the
I love
head,
I
like
love
leaning
that
out.
Yes,
it is so cool looking, but it's like that thing would tip the fuck over without a doubt.
it's such a great visualization of the amount of overkill that Batman brings to the table in that scene, because he's got this giant tank with this giant elephant cannon that's just like mounding up over the mutant leader, coming down to this little tiny gun barrel pointed at him, and it's like, did you bring enough stuff for this one guy? And then
it's
of course
perfect. Of
course in the comic
like
he gets
animal.
his ass kicked. So
it's like looking down like a dinosaur at this little tiny figure in the mud. It's that panel, so the shape is just so unmistakable.
Yeah,
but, I'm glad that they hit that note.
I really like I really like that Batmobile from the front too, because it's got these like armor panels on the side that actually look like bat ears, kind of, in a way that I think feels more in sync with the design than like the old style Batmobile, where it was just like a Studebaker with a big bat shield on the front of it,
Yeah, it's funny. I drew that Studebaker one and reworked it a little bit. And I found a way to make that shield work, I think. There's a few panels in the first volume of White Knight where I have it in the background, and it is a really sweet-looking roadster if you play with the dimensions a bit.
Yeah.
But you got to like sink the shield halfway into the ground. You move like the chin part of the shield forward so it's like a dagger, and there's ways to tweak it. It doesn't look like that car anymore though. Like, it's not charming and classic. It's a Sean Murphy monstrosity, but I think I can get it to work.
Have you ever drawn? Well, first, have you ever drawn that Dark Knight Returns? Batmobile. I assume you haven't, right?
No, the tank. I have not.
Have you ever drawn the '90s Ghost Rider motorcycle?
No, and I know I have a date with the devil on that one. Yeah,
it's such a fascinating design to me, because it works really well, but it feels like a motorcycle designed by someone who doesn't like to draw motorcycles.
Yeah, but that's why.
It's all flat angles. It's all flat angles, and the light hits it really well, so you can like shade it and stuff. But it's not. It doesn't feel like a motorcycle.
The bike looks good because the fire looks good.
Yeah.
It's in rendering the fire and the shape of the fire and like the trail it's leaving. And you have Ghost Rider like turning, and he's like leaning at a diagonal towards the camera, and there's this streak behind the bike, and he's got the chain out, and it's that shape that Textera creates that makes the bike work. It's not actually the bike. It's everything around it, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to do a Ghost Rider someday. I mean, especially the idea of Ghost Rider getting into any vehicle and it turns into a fire vehicle or whatever.
Did you ever see the second Ghost Rider movie?
Yeah, I think I saw. Yeah, that's when he's slightly darker, right?
Yeah. That it's
great effects.
It's not the best movie in the world, but if you want to see a Ghost Rider movie, you could do a lot worse than that movie.
Yeah,
because I was just going to say do. Sorry, I didn't mean to keep talking over you. They do the thing where anything he gets into turns into a Ghost Rider vehicle, and he gets into like increasingly ridiculous things that turn into Ghost Rider vehicles.
Right, that like a stroller.
Well, just like bigger, and like at one point he gets into like this gigantic construction vehicle, and then all of like the treads on whatever he's in turn into fire treads and stuff. It's pretty rad.
I'd start him out on like a razor scooter. I had a really good Ghost Rider idea, and I'm tempted to not talk about it, but I'll put it in there for now, and then you can pull it out later. But I thought about doing one where, remember how the Red Baron in World War I used to hide behind the sun and blind people. He would fly between his enemy and the sun. So if they looked at him, they would just have to squint their eyes, and he was hard to make out.
Yeah.
In my version, he is Ghost Rider. And the sun is not the sun. It's because he's literally on fire, and it's like looking at a star as he's like tearing it up in the sky, basically.
Nice.
So the Red Baron is like one of the first Ghost Riders or something like that.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So if someone takes that idea, I will come after you with my lawyer.
Although I guess if it's a plane, technically just the tiny landing wheels would turn into fire, wouldn't they?
No, I would have the fire be from the front of the engine, just burping fire, and it's encompassing the whole.
Well, now you're just breaking the rules.
Wait, what are the rules?
I don't know. I just
It has
assumed
to be the wheels.
I just assumed so. I'm sure. I'm sure it doesn't matter.
Research first. Yeah, that'd be cool. I just need to fix my relationship with Marvel, which isn't going to happen anytime soon.
Well, all you got one of you has to be the first person to take the step towards reconciliation.
I tried, man. I reached out to do some Star Wars covers, and the guy asked me my rate. I told him, and he never got back to me. And fast forward to us at a party in Chicago where I was drunk, and I found him, and I was yelling at him for not getting back to me, like literally getting into his face. And I wasn't trying to be arrogant. It's like, if you're not getting back to me, you're not getting back to a lot of people. And it's just, I hate when comics doesn't function well. Like, how are you the talent coordinator of Marvel and you can't even write me back? Like, if you think my page rate is too high, then just tell me. We can come to a deal. Like, you don't just ghost me. That's just bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of, we talked about my short fuse on the last episode. That is one of my short fuses. And I went to town on this guy in a bar, and he was shriveling pretty obviously. And one of my friends had to squeeze my knee and calm me down because I don't know. So this poor kid was just doing what he was supposed to, and here I am just yelling at him while he's trying to enjoy himself.
So just so we're clear, you want me to cut out the part about the Ghost Rider idea, but leave in the verbal assault of a Marvel editor?
Yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. Jesus. What would you rate this episode?
I'm gonna go 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
I would give it a 5 out of 5 if they had the Man Bat animated as well.
Yeah. I'm also going to give it a 4, and I'll tell you why.
Oh,
because there's one thing that they could have done in this episode that
Firelit
Batman does not appear. I feel like if they had Firelit Batman at the end of this episode when they fight Firefly, this would be a 5 across the board for me. But obviously, aside from that, I think it's really great. It's my I don't know if I would say it's the best episode, but it's definitely my favorite episode.
Yeah. And the Frank Miller section by itself is a 5.
Yeah, I would think so too. I would say so too. And like the other thing that's so great about that section is they condense so much of Dark Knight Return. Obviously, I mean, you're losing a lot of you're losing a lot of it, but they condense so many great scenes from the book down into that one little vignette and have them play together really seamlessly, even though they don't play that way in the book.
I know.
And it's just really, really well done.
Yeah, that's that's the jewel in the whole episode for me. It's just, I would have wanted more of that and less of Joel Schumacher.
Yeah,
you know?
that's fair.
Or if there's a way to do the whole episode as a retelling where it's just that bit, like give me 22 minutes of Frank Miller Batman, but have it justified in the plot somehow. I don't know.
Yeah.
You have to like bookend it in a different way, of course.
Yeah, I just wish they had done when they actually did do the long when they had done it that way. But
can you hear the lightning?
Yeah, is that thunder?
Yeah,
man,
it's just like. Sorry, I always do that. Can you hear the lightning? I know a lot about weather.
You invoke Frank Miller's Batman, and all of a sudden, lightning and thunder comes to town.
No, that was the anger of the Marvel editor. I just threw under the bus.
Yeah, they've got all of the might of Disney behind them now, so you better watch out.
That's true. I would love to do. I don't know if there's any repercussions for me really fleshing out on a podcast my history with Marvel and what went wrong and why I don't work for them. I don't know if there's any penalty I'll pay at this point, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gossip. Like, it's not going to help anybody. Well, I guess it could. There's a lot of business.
Maybe we'll make that a Patreon exclusive, so at least we can make some money off of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if I'm going to possibly... what would they do? Go after DC, but then DC has their lawyers. They could defend me. I mean, deal.
Yeah, I don't know what there would be to actionable. Well, let's not start going down that road now. Well,
okay.
We'll wait till the Patreon exclusive to talk about your legal options as far as fighting a fictional battle that probably they don't have they don't have a case in the first place. But anyway,
I'm waiting for 20 years from now when Netflix does the comics that made us, and they interview me, and I can finally just like let it fly, because all the people I'll be complaining about will no longer be working.
Well, there you
the
go.
company will be different, so that'll be the time to let loose on Marvel.
Exactly. We're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be back with Girls' Night Out.
5 more miles, Missy. Hey, you should be happy. If GothCorp Labs can undo your condition, you could be back to normal this time tomorrow. If you ever were normal.
Yeah, I love you too, jerkface.
Okay, Girls' Night Out, written by Hilary J. Bader, directed by Kurt Gaeta. And in this one, Livewire, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn join forces. I'm having trouble with these today. Join forces to wreak havoc in Gotham. With Batman and Superman away, Batgirl and Supergirl must team up to stop them and bring them to justice. I had said in the last episode that the appearance of Etrigan was only the second time they've done a character guest spot who is not a Batman universe character, like it's just like a larger DC character. Man, they really just blow through it in this one. It's not even It's not even Superman. It's Supergirl, which I kind of. Yeah. This is a really interesting episode for me because I like a lot of it. Like I really like the Batgirl and Supergirl dynamic. I think they're really fun together. But the whole thing feels a little bit like a backdoor pilot almost.
I think it makes more sense as a pilot for a new kind of cartoon.
Yeah.
I think it'd be pretty decent. I don't think this feels like a Batman animated episode at all, though.
Yeah, it feels like I don't know if I've probably brought this up on this show. I've brought it up on other ones before, but like, you know, in late season or late series shows, we'll always do like, oh, here's the episode of Miami Vice where Crockett and Tubbs are in the beginning and they're in the end, but the middle are 3 new characters you've never seen before going on their own adventure that they're trying to spin off into a new show. And, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, I guess
never said that here.
Yeah, I guess I got to sit through this episode. And I'm not saying that's the same thing because I actually enjoyed watching this, but it has the same kind of feel where it's like they've never really done a side character only episode to this extent. I think it works pretty well, but it is kind of jarring in the overall series.
Oh shit!
Holy
that
crap!
Was another, that
I'm
was
sorry.
Really close.
I'm sorry, Bruce Timm.
Wow, I saw that like hit right outside my window, less than a mile away.
Holy shit!
Yeah, this is awesome, man. Who else can we shit talk here? Apparently, we have the gods' attention, or Ghost Riders. Does Ghost Rider use lightning at all, or just fire?
Just fire, as far as I know.
Okay. You can't be. There's not like a lightning
maybe,
kind of Highlander type of vibe when he Ghost Rider's out.
Maybe Cosmic Ghost Rider uses lightning. I don't know.
Oh, fuck Cosmic Ghost Rider. How the hell? Don't know.
I'm going to the mat for Cosmic Ghost Rider. That's a great character. I like that character a lot.
I honestly don't know much about him, so I can't defend myself. I just think when he puts a space helmet on and his head goes on fire and like, what is he burning? Like the oxygen inside the helmet, does he even really need to breathe in space? I mean, his helmet, he would just be a skeleton with a leather jacket in space. There wouldn't be any air to burn.
Well, it's
right?
It's like cosmic fire. It's not like fire.
Oh, it's like plasma.
Yeah, he's I think he's a creation of Galactus. So he's got a cosmic element to him. Hence the name.
All right, so do you like it in the way you like WWF? Like, oh, this is dumb but ironic and cool, or do you actually think it's good?
No, I like it. It's a cool character.
Okay.
Yeah, he's great. I think he first shows, or one of the first times he shows up is in the Thanos Wins series, and that's a really great series.
Am I getting mixed up with a newer version? Was there a Cosmic Ghost Rider in the last 10 years?
That's there's only ever been one.
Oh, okay. I thought I had a Marvel Series 3 card that had Ghost Rider in space on one of the battles. So I thought he was from the 80s or something.
I don't think so.
Okay.
At least not this version that I'm thinking of anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. What were we talking about? Sorry. So
speaking of getting loose towards the end of the series.
I never loved this one. When I was a kid, I was like, I don't want to watch girls. This is dumb. Like, I had that stupid sexist, mentality as a 12-year-old or 14-year-old. And I still feel that way. No, I'm kidding.
Well, we can tell. We could tell by your animation work where you just have them holed up in the bathroom to get shot at by the Monarch.
Did you? All right, let's get into it this way. Do you remember the first female fictional character that you were into?
Yes.
Like, it wasn't about male power fantasies. This was the first woman that was like, oh man, she's fucking awesome. And it wasn't like you thought she was hot, or maybe it was that too.
Oh, I don't know actually. I think it. Honestly, it might have been
Aliens.
Yeah, that's a good, or maybe Terminator.
Yeah.
Terminator 2, probably.
Yeah. But like, did you ever watch the Powerpuff Girls?
No, I did not.
See, I was into that, which is unusual for me because normally I'm not into all female casts.
Sure.
And even when I was watching like Queen's Gambit, I was like hesitantly going on, and I was blown away by how fucking good that show was. Mm-hmm. Like, loved it. And I there's a lot of media that I love that's just female based. But it's usually a harder sell for me because when I look for fiction, I generally go for male power fantasies,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying I'm proud of that. It's just sort of how I'm wired. And it was surprising to me as I evolved as a creator. I was glad that I was able to write Harley in a way that really transformed the character. Like I suddenly took new interest in writing female characters when I had to write Harley Quinn because I just couldn't not write her to be as interesting as the men around her. So for me, sinking my teeth into that character was like very new for me. And I think a lot of people sort of saw me as a sort of weird, like fixing Harley's flaws, but doing it in a way that was like not too over the top. And I was really like proud to get that compliment, but I don't feel like the candidate to pull out that sort of thing because mainly I gravitate towards stories that's like a guy punching a guy, he's got a gun, he's got attitude in the car. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I never thought I'd be the one to like quote unquote fix Harley Quinn or to evolve her into being a mom. Like just doesn't sound like a story I'd ever be interested in writing, but I guess I sort of wrote that for better or worse,
Yeah.
It's a long way of saying like when I saw this, I don't really know the point I'm making here, honestly. I saw this and I wanted to talk about female characters in comics and how it's like hard for me to grasp sometimes because I'm in it for the male power fantasies, as are most readers, for better or worse,
Yeah. I think one of the things that this episode does pretty well is it doesn't trade on that element of it where like this story is not about Batgirl and Supergirl trying to take the male power fantasy element of it is kind of removed pretty quickly, and it's just a story about two female superheroes versus three female supervillains.
Yeah.
And I think they managed to do it pretty well without really relying on any of that peripheral stuff and just letting these characters be the characters.
They do. Like in Avengers Endgame, that scene in the middle where all the girls are standing together and they're like, get out of the way, boys. Like that kind of record scratch moment. That never happened in this cartoon. I thought it was extremely well done. And I like all these characters,
Yeah.
Like I think it did what it did without drawing attention to the fact that they were winning brownie points by let's do one for the ladies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't even know if that's why they did it. They might have just wanted to use those characters,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it works really well. I think.
Wait, no, they clearly did it. It's three bad guy females versus two good guy girls. No, God. There's got to be a better way to say
bad
that.
guy girls and good guy girls. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I don't know if they're doing it to throw a bone to anybody as much as I mean maybe they were, I don't know, but maybe they just wanted to do an episode with the female characters for the sake of doing an episode with the female characters. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No. That's okay. So we're agreeing then.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know. Ugh, my brain exploded on trying to get that sentence out. That's might be the most non-politically correct thing I've ever said.
on mic, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, ladies. It always surprised me. Like, and I sort of touched on this before. When I was getting into comics, and I would meet women who were into comics too, I was like so happy to see women at conventions, and so happy that they were reading comics. And I do agree. Like, at least when I was growing up, comics were mostly created for and read by men, ages 15 to 35 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I know they used to have romance comics and stuff back in the day that was for women, which is kind of sexist, but we can get into that some other time. But I love to see women there. But whenever I would speak to them, I'd be like, sort of like this, like, what are you doing here? This is great that you're here. But like, what books are you reading? There's no way you're reading Batman punching people and like enjoying these male power fantasies the same way I am. Like, I knew that it was a different kind of customer.
Now who's being sexist?
I know. But I was just so happy to see them and enchanted that they were there. And as I started my career, like, I worked with Karen Berger, got me in, and most of my editors at DC have been women, and I've got a lot of female. Like, I don't need to prove my liberal feminist rank, but I'm so glad that happens. But it's just interesting to me that a genre that specializes in male power fantasies has managed to attract women at all. It's a good thing. Of course, but it's just amazing to me that, especially with all the shit that goes down online and all these accusations, it's just, I'm amazed any women still bother reading sometimes.
Yeah.
It just seems so awful out there the way they're treated at shows and cosplay or whatever,
Yeah, well, I think there are a lot of great female characters that, and I mean, I don't want to generalize and say that's the only thing they're into, but like,
of course not.
Yeah, I think the just the general representation is a lot better than it used to be, and there's so many more female creators now that are leveling the playing field.
I noticed when I was doing Image, I would get a lot more female readers. Like, it seemed like I was getting like 40% of my people in line were women, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started doing Batman, it's like 95% men now.
Yeah.
And I thought what was happening was maybe because my Image books generally had a female lead character.
Sure.
But I also heard from my female readers that the reason that they like my stuff is because I draw backgrounds, like very lush, complete backgrounds.
Oh, interesting.
And they really enjoy setting more than they enjoy pictures of men punching each other. So even though Tokyo Ghost had a lot of violence and men punching each other, I still drew a lot of these like epic landscapes of trees and flowers, and just the women I spoke to seemed to gravitate more towards that stuff and less towards lead dent on his motorcycle.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's weird because, like, again, like I don't think of myself as a good. Just case in point, look at how much I'm fumbling talking about this subject, trying to step over laser beams and hitting every single goddamn one of them. I don't see myself as a good spokesperson for these sorts of values and for feminism in comics. Yet, I happen to have done a ton of books that have female leads in them. I remember getting the pitch from Rick for Tokyo Ghost, and it was supposed to be Led Dent was the main character, and I'm like, this is such a bro-y macho story. I feel like maybe if Debbie Decay was the main character, it would really balance the book. And I think if she was sort of like Debbie Harry from Blondie or something like that, like this tank girl, like this cute tank girl, badass chick, or like a Harley Quinn in a way, that's perfect. So we sort of moved the book in that direction. Or it was the Wake had a female lead character, American Vampire did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never thought I'd be drawing. At one point, I remember being like, why the fuck am I drawing all these? Like, don't get me wrong. I am thrilled to have a job, and I love drawing these characters. But I thought I got into this to draw men with square jaws punching each other, and now I'm drawing women. This is nuts. So try to cancel me now, haters.
Oh, boy.
I cannot wait to listen to this when it's all put together. I don't know what this is going to mean. Are you following me at all? Is this making any sense?
No, I know what you mean. I understand what you mean. I think with older comics fans and creators, even, because if you're a creator, you're generally a fan. There is a perceived idea of who might be into comic books in general, who might be into specific comic books, that is now doesn't really exist anymore. And
that's fair.
I think with a lot of things in the world today, and I mean every generation goes through this, it takes a little bit of adjustment, and you kind of have to recognize that things are moving away from what you're used to, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you're saying it's a bad thing, but I'm just in general. For instance, the thing that I still can't believe is the first time I was at a family Christmas party with my girlfriend, and her 13-year-old cousin, who was also a girl, was talking to me about the Infinity Gauntlet. Right. And I just flashed back to when I was 13 years old, reading comics that featured the Infinity Gauntlet and thinking, I can't talk to anyone about this, let alone a girl.
Yeah.
And now this thing that is fairly obscure in comics, let alone all of pop culture, is and if I tried to talk to anyone, or so especially a girl, about this, they would think I was an insane person, is now like the core of popular culture and entertainment. Yeah. And it just like I was having these two conflicting feelings where I'm like, this is really cool, but also I can't believe this is happening. This is just so outside the realm of what I'm used to when it comes to comics and anything like that. And so it does take some adjustment, and it does to realize that the net is a lot wider than it used to be, and I think it's all better for it.
Yeah, I used to be ashamed of reading comics when I was a kid. I was the guy who had the comic hidden by a real book wrapped around it, so no one would see that I was reading comics. All my friends were athletes, and they were cool, and I wasn't popular, but I had a lot of different kinds of friends. But I just didn't want anybody to know that I was reading comics. And like, I loved the movie The Rocketeer and Ninja Turtles, and I felt like I was too old to keep talking about it. So even though like I love the Rocket, like I happily would have talked your ear off about The Rocketeer while I was a senior in high school, but I never did that because I didn't feel like it was appropriate. I didn't want people seeing my porn, so to speak, it's just below. And even now, it's weird to tell. I feel weird telling people that I draw comics because I still have a little bit of that in me. Like, oh God, this is embarrassing. Comics are for kids. Everyone knows they're stupid. And I don't really feel that way, of course. But I know that they must feel that way. But that's totally wrong now because the movies have changed that. Like, again, our friend... our single friend is on Tinder, and he writes that he's a Marvel artist, and he gets laid because of that. Like, that was the opposite. It was like kryptonite's getting laid, at least in my mind.
Yeah, that was when he told us that was very much like you don't understand how good you have it, you like, son of a bitch.
You, man. Yeah, I hope you catch an STD of some kind. It's really painful.
But no, I mean, I know what you mean. Like, I still, when people ask me what I do, I say I'm an illustrator first. And then usually they say, what do you illustrate? And then I'll say comic books, and they go, oh, cool. I'm like, yeah. But it's just that's how I've always thought about it.
Yeah. I was literally using that last night at a bar. My wife's out of town for a few days, so I'm just living by myself. And I went out to a bar to read because I just needed to get out of the house last night. And I was chatting up with this girl I didn't know. And she's like, what do you do for work? So I'm like, I'm an illustrator. She's like, okay, what do you mean? I'm like, well, it's kind of long. We don't have to talk about work. So she's like, oh, okay. So we're moving on to another subject. And then we're talking about pole dancing. And I mentioned how I just bought my wife a pole for our gym. She's like, wait, you have a wife, and you have money to spend on superfluous exercise activity in your personal gym, in your house? What kind of illustrator are you? And I'm like, I work for Warner Brothers. She's like, doing what? And I go, I'm in, media distribution. Like, I tried to dodge every point.
Why?
It's like, don't say comics. Don't say comics. I don't know. I'm just still,
just say
still
Batman.
Me at age 18. I don't want to talk about The Rocketeer.
I mean, the question that I had was, why did you put the pole in the gym?
That's where all the mirrors are.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's the highest ceiling on our property.
And also the Historical Society probably would frown on you putting a pole inside your house.
Well, if it's made out of iron using the right materials, like Victorian pole dancers,
the same kind of poles they had in the 1800s. I think you'll be fine.
Oh man, you want to talk about my short fuse? Get me going on about the Historic Society and how they've fucked with me so many times while I'm trying to put money into my house to make the neighborhood better.
Patreon,
it's literally
Patreon
something
exclusive.
That no one wants to hear about right now.
Anyway, we haven't really talked about this episode much at all.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most interesting aspects is that Batgirl gets to drive the Batmobile in this, which I don't even think Robin ever got to do in the show.
Yeah, that was cool. Are you a Livewire fan?
Honestly, no. I don't have anything against the character, but it never really stood out to me. Like I don't know. Maybe I just don't like the electricity characters. Like I never really cared about Electro and Spider-Man either. You know, I don't know. How do you feel about it?
Lori Petty is the actress who does her voice,
Yeah.
and I had kind of a minor crush on her back in, in the 90s. When she was the mom in Free Willy, and she was in what else was she in?
She was Kit in A League of Their Own.
Yeah, couldn't live with her own. She was Tank Girl.
Yeah.
But she's kind of like, she crosses into that like punk, hot, and sexual as a woman, but also like really powerful, kick your ass type of thing. So that was my thing for a bit. So I was actually at Detroit at a convention before COVID, and she was there, and I had access to the real green room, not just the quote unquote green room that they put comic book artists in, which I can go and do later. So when I realized when I would go to shows, they put me in the comic green room. It's like the one that everybody gets into, and I couldn't eat without being hassled by somebody coming up to me and interrupting. So the next time I went to a show, this sounds really entitled, I apologize. I said to the promoter, can I have access to the real green room? I'm not going to bother any celebrities, but you don't understand. Like, it's hard for me to get through a meal with these nerds from Artist Alley walking up to me thinking it's okay to talk to me. So keeping that in mind, now
Why didn't you just go eat inside your car you don't drive, Sean?
I was in Detroit. I didn't have it. It's quite an image, though. So I'm in the green room, and like Charlie Hunnam, Sons of Anarchy is there, and a couple of actors from The Office, Kevin from The Office is there, and I'm not bothering anybody because I know what it's like to be bothered in the green room, and I don't want to be that guy. I see Lori Petty there. The next morning I get up and I go down to just the breakfast place, which is where everybody can go. And Lori Petty is sitting at the bar, already having drank like 2 or 3 cocktails.
Oh boy.
It's like 10 a.m. Yeah, like she looks good, but she also looks like she's been rode hard and put away wet. And I'm kind of near her, and she's wearing sunglasses, and I can't tell if she's like hungover or if she's still living that rock star lifestyle or if that's just the vibe she gives off. I have no idea. And on one hand, I kind of want to be like, oh man, I'm a big fan of, your movies and this and that. But I'm like, then I'm the guy who's bothering people, not only in the green room, but out at breakfast. And I couldn't tell by her body language. Like, she was kind of scoping me out too, and she's not sure, like, this is some weird actor from Stranger Things that I don't know. Like, I imagine that when you've been in entertainment that long, you don't know who the new people coming in all the time are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it must be easy for somebody to walk through a celebrity green room and everyone just assumes, as long as you look like you're not awkward, that you're supposed to be there, you know?
Right.
But I didn't actually have the nerve to go up and talk to her or say anything because, I don't know. I didn't know how it would go over. And I don't really know what I was going to say other than, hey, I loved you in the movie. Bye. You sure you should be drinking that much at 10 a.m.?
Okay, so the point of that story is you have access to the better green room than the artists do. Okay.
Well, hopefully. People are going to learn my secret. I mean, when you go up to an artist at a show who, a writer or some big quote-unquote celebrity in comics, and they're surrounded by people chatting to them, do you just walk right up and barge in and just say stuff? Or do you wait, pick your moment? Yeah, like you're a good low impact type of guy, and you know when it's appropriate to, you know when someone's not like, choking down a sandwich to get back to a signing. That's not a good time to ask them about their life story, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people are just not good at that. And I don't know.
Yeah, some people, everybody wants to shoot their shot, but some people choose the wrong moment to do it, I guess.
Yeah, I get it. Like I've screwed up, and when I was coming up through the ranks, I said the wrong thing or came on too strong, and I was that annoying guy a dozen times before I figured out.
We all have been.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing about this episode is that it is a straight crossover with Superman. You could almost like, it's not explicitly that way, but if I had to guess, I would assume that this episode was probably played after the Superman episode where they defeat Livewire. If I right,
Yeah.
because it makes sense
That
if
makes
you're
sense.
doing back-to-backs like that.
Did this whole season get made after the Superman was finished?
This, if I remember correctly, this season ran concurrently with Superman. So they would do they would do a Superman episode and a Batman episode, and they would package them together.
That was a dumb question. Obviously, it's called what did they call the show? It was like the Hour of Superman.
Yeah,
Batman.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember. We had the Warner Brothers stores at the time too, and you could go into the mall and get like sweet maquettes of these. Man, I miss the Warner Brothers store.
Still got
they had all the shit.
I still got my denim Superman jacket, baby. It's the best jacket I own.
When are you gonna wear that?
Wow.
I mean, we just learned that our friend Joe has a massive Spider-Man tattoo on his back that has escaped notice for at least a decade.
Yeah.
Isn't it time for you to wear the Superman jacket?
I think so. I think the next convention that I do that we're all at, I'll bust that thing out.
I mean, you see me wear weird things at shows, like my polyester shirts and shit.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to put something on, man. You got to, I don't know. You're always wearing just like shorts and a black t-shirt.
Yeah,
some
next
like
time,
ironic horror movie.
Next time we hit a comic convention, I'll wear my Superman jacket. You dress like a 70s vampire, and we'll go to the bar.
Perfect. What's the problem?
Hey, we'll be right back in middle school where no one will want to talk to us.
Do you think that the new Matrix movie coming out is going to turn kids and make them all like leathery goth again?
I kind of hope so. I was when that trailer came out, I was reminiscing with a friend of mine about how I went to see the third Matrix at the IMAX in Lincoln Center in New York when I was in college, and a packed house. It was like opening night, packed house. There were only 2 people in the entire place who came in costume, and oh boy. Oh, it was really unfortunate. The crowd, they let them have it pretty good. And it was like clearly the end of that trend where it was like, if this was Matrix 2, I bet this would have been fine. But we're at Matrix 3. We're kind of just waiting to see how this all ends. That whole thing has already run its course. Yeah. You're showing up in a black suit with the tiny sunglasses, and it's not going to go in New York, and it's not going to go well.
No, it's funny. There was a weird time in the late 90s when nerds in high school, kids who normally play Magic and are used to getting picked on, there was a bunch of movies that sort of celebrated the hero nerds. Like Hackers sort of made nerds look cool, and The Matrix was obviously sort of doing that too. Like, if you guys only knew how powerful we are, one day the whole world is going to be computers, and then we'll be the badasses. Nah.
Well,
which is basically the plot of Matrix.
Yeah.
But then they started wearing dark leather trench coats and stuff, and then there was the Columbine shooting, so that was out for a while.
Yeah.
Probably a good move. But I don't know if the Matrix style is going to start coming back. But it's cool that nerds can be different versions of nerds now that are actually cool. You know, like I know friends of mine are sort of goth nerds, and I don't know.
Well,
I'm canceling myself again.
What's really interesting to me is how, if you look back before basically Iron Man, let's say, before the Iron Man movie came out, there were so few franchises, like new franchises that people were like super into. Like, unless people forgot, Avatar was the biggest movie in the world ever. And then like a year later, everybody forgot about it. Like, I feel like nobody talks about Avatar ever, except for the people who put the money into building Avatar Land at Disney, which legitimately is pretty cool. But it's not like Avatar doesn't occupy a place in pop culture and people's minds and hearts the way like the Star Wars does or Harry Potter or anything. And
Avatar, sorry.
Well, and I was just gonna say, and it seems like at a certain point after that, like right around when the MCU started, everything became franchised, and everything became a lot more widely accepted to go really hard for the franchise that you like. So cosplay got a little bit more interesting and out there and more common and stuff. And it's really interesting because you've got people going really hard on The Matrix. You've got people going really hard on Avatar, and like maybe Lord of the Rings is in there somewhere, but it feels like not as much as Avatar and The Matrix. And that was like it. Yeah. And now it's literally anything. People go hard on whatever they like.
Yeah. That's true.
Which is cool. I mean, I like
Yeah.
how diverse all of the interests can be.
You could be into anything. Like, I have friends whose kids, they have their own style. One kid loves to wear 80s shit. One kid loves 90s shit. One kid loves to mix it up in the 60s. And it's like when we were in high school, you had, 3 channels and then some basic cable. So we were all kind of watching the same thing. We all had the same entertainment to pull fashion from,
Yeah.
So you see all in the 80s. Oh, yeah, you got early 80s, which is like kind of dull.
Three
plaid.
channels? Did you grow up in like 1973?
No, I meant like ABC, CBS, like the major 3 networks.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I know what you
I
mean.
can clarify that. That's fair. But yeah, and then, like in the late 80s, it was more like, Neon Lights and Zach Morris style,
sure,
Saved by the
yeah.
Bell 80s. And then the 90s was Chokers, and then late, whatever. But now, like, I can't tell you what fashion happened 10 years ago. Like, I can't
Sure.
recognize it.
Yeah.
Like, all right, skinny jeans. I know, I don't even know those are back in right now. Because style with the internet has gone all over the place. Like, Etsy and Reddit and all these apps will suggest clothing for you from all over the planet. So like there isn't like one kind of style taking over each generation like there used to be. Now everyone's kind of doing their own thing, which is
Right.
cool.
Yeah. It's I mean, I think also part of that is we're not exactly in the demographic anymore, but
I remember seeing The Wedding Singer with Adam Sandler, which came out in like 96. And it was like, oh man, remember 10 years ago in 1986
Sure,
when DeLoreans were cool and the
Yeah.
hair was weird and this and that and CDs? Like, and I remember seeing like, oh my God, it's crazy how much we've come in 10 years when it comes to styles and trends. And that's only a 10-year difference. Like, I
Yeah.
don't feel like if they made Wedding Singer now and they were like, remember how crazy 2011 was with
Yes,
this and that?
yeah.
Like, I don't know what that would look like. Like,
Well, we,
2011 looks like now, but different phones.
on Rotten Horror Picture Show, we recently did Jennifer's Body, which is a horror movie from I think like 2009, I think somewhere in the mid to late aughts. I can't remember exactly when. So it's about 10, 15 years old at this point. And when we were talking about it, I said to Amanda, I was like, I don't know where this style places, because it is a lot of stuff that I recognize from before that time and a lot of stuff that I recognize after that time. So I don't think if you showed this to me, I could tell you what year it takes place in. And it's a high school movie, so it's very much like kids look like kids, or at least the movie version of kids.
Right.
So it's not like they're not trying to be cute with the style or the time frame or anything. And I was just like, if I didn't see the year that this was made and you asked me to pick a year, I would say anything from between 2002 to 2015, and I would have no idea.
I feel that way about the show Sex Education.
Yeah, I think that might be by design on that show, though.
100%.
Yeah.
But that's what's so interesting about it.
Yeah.
Is it's like, but this could have been made in the 80s or up to now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They do it.
It's cool.
They do that really well in It Follows as well,
Mm-hmm.
where it's everybody seems modern, but there's such a mix of technology that's involved that it's really out of time. So they kind of get like this really kind of ambiguous time frame where it could be today, it could be 20 years ago. You don't know.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was just thinking about your joke about me eating in my Datsun alone at a convention. That's hilarious, Clay. I'll tell you why. Because it encompasses my arrogance and my being annoyed that I can't eat. And then here I am, like at the top of the mountain in comics in my fancy car I had built just for me, sadly eating alone outside the convention center because people will bother me, and the car is probably broken.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that says it all right there, actually.
Yeah. Well, thank you for explaining the joke.
No, I know.
Anyway, let's finish talking
Yeah, I know
about
you
this
got a heart
episode
out,
so
I
we
know.
can get out of here.
Yep.
Do you have anything else you want to say about the episode itself before we go into
No.
the end here?
Nope.
What would you want to draw?
I don't know, but I don't want to draw Livewire. I don't like drawing electricity. I never know what to do. Like, unless a character is being struck or has like electrical powers, if they're cast against a black background, then I can just do white and like make so cool little like
Sure, yeah.
electric tendrils, like, and then the colors can make it glow. But I hate when they are doing that in broad daylight and you have to draw the containment line of electricity and all that. Like, I just don't. I'm not good at it. I don't have the patience for it. But then I see people like Olivier Coipel do it really well, and like I don't know. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. So yeah, anything with electricity, I'm probably not going to be into.
Did you feel like you managed to figure it out for plot holes? Because you had one character that was very electrical based in that one.
I think that's when I realized how much I hated
Yeah.
it. It's like, why did I give this guy these powers? This is awful.
That's
Anyway,
pretty funny.
I kept trying different things, and it's like, does the containment line have to be the same thickness?
Right.
I think I looked at Ryan Otley's stuff a lot because he's really good at that, and I don't know. I'd rather spend my calories drawing trees and backgrounds than drawing electrical effects. Like, I don't like drawing magic effects.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw electricity in there with that.
You know, I wish that I could draw more superhero stuff, because in my career, I've never drawn superheroes professionally.
Yeah.
I've done it for pinups and stuff, but I've never drawn a comic story with superheroes in it. And every time I think about it, I think about how there's so much language that I don't actually know how well I would handle it, because I don't really do it that much. And like energy blasts, energy blast is a big one for me, where I'm like, I'd have to do some like research to figure out, because in your head it's like, oh yeah, they just shoot shit out of their hands or whatever. It's, how hard could it be? And then you actually got to sit down and do it, and it's like, oh yeah, there's a certain kind of elegance to the way these guys do this that makes it look solid. And I had a little bit of that in Bloody Hell, and I don't love it when I did it. I think I would do it differently if I had to do it again. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'd love to do superheroes, but I think it would be harder than I think for me. Because most of my stuff is like, just up to this point, it's just like regular people, or slightly heightened reality, not a ton of magic and capes and stuff.
Yeah, like you have the textures and techniques for historical stuff. As long as you can draw horses, fire, and lightning every now and then, like that, those are the most sci-fi things you might have to deal.
Right.
But, drawing Superman shooting laser beams out of his eyes, picking up a building, landing, and getting struck, whatever. Like, then a magician appears behind him and does some gobbledygook with his hands. I have no idea. Like, I have tree texture, speed lines, thumbprints, dry brush. I have these tools. I don't know which to use in which order to make the magic guy work. Yeah. I don't know what to do with it. Yeah. It's so funny. Like, you spend so long deciding how you're going to draw your, like, Clay McCormick's version of a rock and bricks and mud.
Right, yeah.
You got them kind of in your little your reference book, but magic, no idea.
Yeah. Even like even in some figure elements too, because it's like the stuff that I've drawn arms, like big arms enough where it's like, okay, I roughly know how I would handle like big muscles on the arms, but like anytime I draw like Superman and I get to his like stomach, I'm like, well, do I want to do like a 6-pack? That feels kind of weird. Do I want to do more of like a stretched fabric kind of look with like a more implied muscles? Like it's a different kind of language than I'm used to, because most of the people that I draw, you don't have to see whether or not they do sit-ups.
Yeah. Yeah, like drawing tights, spandex, and like back in the comics up until 10 years ago, characters are just basically, you drew them as if they were sort of naked, and then you would color it red.
Right.
And boom, now it's Daredevil.
Yeah.
You didn't really have to think about armor. Like Hollywood and video games really pushed us into thinking about like, well, is he wearing, carbon, or is it leather, or is it this, or is it that? Yeah, and like the people that draw Batman just suited up like SWAT team armor. You don't even know if he has muscles at all. To me, that's not my favorite version of Batman.
Same.
I kind of like old school. He's so fucking tough. It's just his muscles are his armor.
Right, right, yeah.
But yeah, it's a way to go. Like I know Lee Bermejo, a friend of mine, loves textures. He cannot stop. It's an obsession, and he'll even admit like it drives him crazy because he can't draw like a knuckle on a character without making it wrinkly as fuck. So all of his characters are wearing leather everywhere, and just like he drives himself crazy because he's just particular about that kind of stuff, and that's awesome. It's not at all what I do, and that's cool. But it's funny how people kind of fall into those categories. Yeah,
I think there's a happy. I tend to find myself leaning more towards the way John Paul Leon handled it, where it's like he does those big. We talked about it before. He does like the big work glove type fingers, like the thick fingers and stuff. And it's a way of solving that problem that I think feels more natural than if I were to try and draw like a Jim Lee hand or something.
Right.
You know, like I think you got to find what works for you and works for your style, which you know may or may not help you to get those jobs, because obviously it hasn't helped me to get those jobs. But
it's funny, if Jim Lee was a costume designer, he would be going into the latex store and getting shiny, colorful this, and that. Like you could see him as a costume designer, like, okay, this is what if John Paul Leon was a costume designer, he would go into a hardware store, plop down a cheap pair of gloves and a hammer and be like, bam, I'm going to draw this and it's going to look fucking awesome.
Yes. Yeah. For this one, I think I would draw, I really like the Batgirl and Supergirl dynamic. I think I would like to draw something with the two of them.
You know, flying around with Batgirl on her back is actually pretty endearing.
That's a cool image. That's a fun sequence. I think the best part about this episode is the relationship between those two, because they do. Yeah. You know, they both kind of have. They don't necessarily have chips on their shoulders, but they're like underestimated enough that they're both trying to kind of step out. Yeah. They have that great scene where they're hanging out in Barbara's apartment, and Barbara wishes she could live on a farm, and Kara wishes that she could live in the city, that kind of thing. I think it works really well. Right.
They took that moment, and as we say, this season is sort of shy on those human moments that slow down a bit, and that's definitely a good example of them doing it correctly.
Yeah.
It's funny, too. I couldn't help but feel like, well, how come our dads don't get along? Superman and Batman always hate each other. Look at how much you and I are clicking. What's the big deal? You know?
Yeah, I think this episode could have very easily fallen into one of those really kind of empty mid-season ones we've been talking about. But I think they do the work with the two of them to make it stand out a little bit more than that. And even with Harley and Ivy and Livewire, they have a pretty fun dynamic. And I think
like how Harley keeps using a sledgehammer, and it doesn't work on anything.
Her smashing the ATM with the sledgehammer was one of my favorite parts of the episode, I think. But I think they even push the Harley and Ivy relationship probably as far into them being an item as you could at this point in kids' cartoons.
They get pretty close to lesbianics.
Yeah, which, keep pushing that forward. I think they finally got it onto TV in that HBO show after 20 years. So yeah,
it's funny. Yeah, they can do whatever they want in that show. They can swear. They can have Batman.
Sure can.
But I can't make those jokes in Batman comics. I can't even draw a guy with a gun on a cover anymore because they're so afraid of outrage. Yeah. And I look at what they're doing. Like, how come the people were doing this fucking cartoon and getting away with this shit, but I'm not allowed to draw a gun on a cover?
Yeah. It was really, I'll be honest, it was really jarring when I saw like the first clip from that show, and it featured the Joker making an HPV joke about Harley. I was like, what is this show?
Yeah. I struggled with that.
Who's letting them do this?
I struggled with the first episode. My wife liked it, so we kept going, and then I started to get into it.
Yeah.
But I was not on board right away.
Yeah, I was the same way. I think it kind of evens out a bit as it goes, but that first episode was a bit too much for me. But
yeah, it's too much. Like, you see, it's not for kids anymore. It's like, we fucking get it. Calm down, Jesus.
What would you rate this episode?
I don't know. I'm at a 3 out of 5. I don't know. It just it doesn't feel like a Batman story at all.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 3 as well. I think it's okay. I think it's just shy of being a 4. If it didn't feel so out of place, but I do think it's got a lot of really good stuff in it. Maybe if they had a little bit more in-universe justification and it didn't feel so much like a backdoor pilot, I think it probably would have worked a little bit better for me. But
yeah, backdoor pilot, it's a good term.
Yeah.
Did you make that up, or is that like a thing that everyone knows about except for me?
I think it's a term, a pre-existing term. I heard it somewhere.
Okay.
You gotta roll the windows down in that car.
Yeah.
Oh man. So that's gonna do it for this episode of the Badass Podcast. We only have 2 episodes of our show left before we finish Batman the Animated Series as it stands, and then we will have to figure out. Someone asked us if we were gonna do the Beware the Batwoman movie, which I hadn't thought about, but I guess technically it is part of the thing.
Yeah,
right?
That's rough.
I've actually never seen it, so it might be worth checking it out just to check it out and do something.
I remember not liking it. I do like that they brought Roland Daggett back because he hasn't really been a character that they've used in that universe for a while. But that was we'll try it. Maybe Maybe I'm remembering.
Yeah,
correctly.
I think we're going to do a couple things before we jump into Batman Beyond. I think I want to do the Superman episodes, the crossover episodes from the first season of Superman or whatever, and so
Absolutely.
we'll have a few things. But yeah, we'll be back next time with Mad Love and Chemistry. So thank you guys for listening, and thank you, Sean.
Thanks, man. Thanks for that was so funny the way you made fun of me in my car. I thought that was perfect. I'm still laughing at it, man.
Well,
like,
as long
honestly,
as you liked it.
I go on these tirades and I talk fast and I step on laser beams, like I said. I very am a lot of. I love being made fun of because I know I deserve it. So thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.